Hello and welcome to Quantum Realms 2022. And here we have a roundtable that will really talk about the concept and the whole idea of power. So first of all, we'll introduce ourselves and then we'll go right into stories and concepts and all the ideas. Okay, so let's start. Patricia.
Yes, well, thank you, Harry. My name is Patricia and I live in the Netherlands. I'm a quantum healer. I was trained by Dolores Cannon and by Candice Goldman. And I'm also an astrologer, and I'm developing a technique that combines quantum healing with astrology at the moment. So that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. What a beautiful introduction. So I'm Chrysilla Lewies. I'm in London, or not far from it. And I work with these wonderful bunch of people. As a quantum healer, I practice not only quantum healing, but I do spiritual readings as well. And looking forward to talking about power and how we can work with it, manifest it, and sharing stories, the magic of it. So thank you, Harry, for holding the space today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chrysilla and Patricia. And Harry, thank you. My name is Kenny Baker. I am located in Michigan currently, but I'm all over. I'm from the East Coast and we travel a lot. So I have been a BQH practitioner since 2017. And I started up when it all started with Candice herself. So I'm very privileged and proud to know all of you from the beginning. It's such an honor and it's powerful. And I am looking forward to this conversation and see what unfolds from here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diana Adair, and I'm so excited to be with this group today. See all your faces. I too am a quantum healer trained in QHHT and BQH, and I also practice other modalities. I weave in with that, and also am a writer and focus on really ancient history. For my fiction and nonfiction is all about self-healing and helping humanity in any way to empower ourselves. It's great to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. And I'm Harry Kroner. I'm located in Arizona, but work with people all over the world, just like most of you are. And quantum healer trained by Dolores Cannon and Candice, and have in the past year have developed my own modality, quantum healing methods, and have been training people in it. And also just an author as well in a couple of books. And that I'm in. So let's start a conversation. Patricia, you wanted to say something to start?
Yes. Well, I've been thinking about the topic that we are talking about today, power. Like what is power? What does it mean to me? And how do I see that in my sessions? And I've noticed that it has many aspects to it, but what I see with many clients is that it has got to do with being in touch with your own integrity and with your own authority, which I call inner authority. And so when I do sessions with people, I usually start with an exercise and to have them get this feeling like, what is my inner authority? And because I've noticed that when we think about power and what is the lack of power, it often got to do with fear. The lack of power often relates to fear. So how can we change fear? And how can we transform that into trust or into love or into feeling empowered? And so I always start with an exercise where people are describing their fear. And we really try to go deep there, like go to the core of one's fear. And then we're going to turn it around, like, okay, well, what if you would listen to your inner authority, to your inner wisdom? And how would you call that? What name would you give to that inner authority? And I always like to call that the higher self. And of course, the higher self is what we work with in our sessions. I think that is what makes quantum healing sessions unique from many other modalities, is that we work directly with the higher self. And when we communicate with that part of ourself, then we seem to be aligned with our inner power. And this could be many things. But I feel that it's about feeling connected and being able to make sense of our reality. And even if that reality is multidimensional or flexible, because I feel that in the sessions that we do, and I think we all have those experiences, that reality is like expanding so much, and it becomes something very different than we know from everyday life. But as long as we feel that we are connected with our story and with the story of the people that we love, it's that feeling of making sense of reality and feel connected with our loved ones. And this is all what I see as empowering. So I would really love to hear what you think when you think of the concept of power.
That was wonderful. You said a few things there, Patricia, that just made me jump with joy and smile, because you talked about how we dive into our stories and how it's multidimensional. And I know, for example, Diana and Donna, they work with surrogates, right? And the fact that through just that multidimensional portal or gateway that we have, we can connect to that power, that essence of us, through any means. So it's not just one thing. And what I am working on recently is working with children. And I don't feel there's a lot of people within our field that work with children, and how children access their past life memories. Sorry, my voice. So that we as we grow old, have all these trauma, and we see them as trauma and something that needs resolving. But as I'm working with children of late, they're so playful and I don't take anything seriously. But there are moments when you work with them where this past life or a traumatic experience will come in, but they will experience it, and all they need from us is that reassurance that everything is going to be okay. It's not necessarily about reliving that trauma. And so for me, the power dynamic that comes in here is just having the confidence that everything's okay, and that you said that this is just a story, right? This is just another story that has happened. So it doesn't necessarily have to impact our life to a degree that it keeps repeating itself. So I find everything that we do so complex, but it's complex because we make it so. It is simple, and it's exploring what comes up within our higher selves intuitively, even when we work with our clients, by just keeping it simple. And I say, keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method. Yeah, thank you.
I love that, Chrysilla, that returning to the child. It's been my experience in my own inner journey of healing or coming to wholeness and working with clients that, our children, our little kids are much smarter than we give them credit for. And they do hold the basic truths. And what connects for me when you say keep it simple is that reassurance that everything is going to be okay. And I've found within myself and my clients this strong connection between the fear that you're talking about, Patricia, and also the belief. Always goes back to what are we believing in that moment? What did we come to believe from that experience that was traumatic? And in that way, we're pulling it into the present moment. And I had a powerful example of this recently. I had a session with this man who, just an amazing session, and it showed me how we empower ourselves and we disempower ourselves. And he was coming in because he had what he thought was a split or alternate personality, because there was this one part of him that was super functional and super healthy and super happy and everybody loved him. And then this other part that would become very aggressive and very aggro and very like, I'll take care of this. And as we got into the session and started to seek the root of that, you know, where it's the original source point and all the things we're trained to do, it came from a place of never enough, not enough. I can't be enough, you know, and he was the star in school. He, you know, was the captain of all the teams, got straight A's, and his father's message was always, you can do better, you can do better. And so here he comes into his adult life, and even though he is highly successful, and you would look at him and say, oh my God, you're the picture of health in every way, that is still driving him, and he's disempowering himself from that moment. And so going into that and changing that belief and recognizing, and I mean, it's almost bringing tears to my eyes, because I too have just been working around this very thing of, it's so insidious of not being enough. And so I find that I can reclaim my power when I go back to, I find that thing that I have like given it away from. And it's very exciting for me to help people do that, and also for my own self. But that's where I come back to that everything is okay. What is this I'm believing right now that's making me feel stressed or angry or fearful or all these other things? So thank you for sharing that about children, because I think they hold so much for us to learn.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, because I think it's in childhood that we first meet in our lives, the moment in which we lose our power or feel powerless. At least, again, that feels that way. We actually give our power away, but we are feeling at that moment we're powerless. We're being, whatever it is, ridiculed, being forced to do by adults to do what we don't want to. So we feel powerless. And that's at the first encounter of that. And so we definitely have to, when I worked a lot of inner child work with so many clients, it is about reclaiming that moment and seeing it from a place of power. And I like to bring usually the adult self and help heal the child, and help them give them perspective and tell them it's okay, you know, we're going to have a good life. So it's in that way. And sometimes it's actually interesting, because people do, from feeling powerless now in their adulthood, for example, like if they're going through a rough divorce or going through a grief and loss and challenges of different kinds, I actually have that part of them, that young child that was free and full of love and power and joy and that joy for life. And that part of them is coming and reminding them of what is and what they can be and what they used to be, and bring that the feeling, essence, and vibration back into who they are right now. So and so it brings back to all that. It's really becoming more aligned, no matter how they get to it. It's aligning with that inner self and that connection. And I see, like, right, it's like connecting, aligning with their power, aligning with their higher self, with their soul's purpose and mission. And once you start reconnecting with it, because we just discuss, as we start kind of feeling just jaded with stuff and getting upset or tired or whatever it is, we just get kind of smaller. We feel smaller and smaller and less connected to who we are. So it's that sometimes I have to do it myself too, just like, oh, I feel like really kind of burdened by things, and say like, okay, no, like, hey, let's remember who we really are. Like, oh yeah, that's right. And operating and doing the same thing. The situation doesn't have to change. What needs to change is the feeling, that being in your power, being in your space. And actually, Chrysilla, you wrote an article about confidence, I think, just a week ago, I think so. You published it, and it said something so perfect there. It's like, I know what I am, and I know what I want. That's the definition of confidence. It doesn't have to be overt power that shows up and I am powerful. It doesn't have to be that. It's just like, I am powerful within myself, no matter what the situation. And just not letting things rattle you and being in that space of resilience. And I just find it was so perfect to read it as we're getting ready for the power panel here. So it's really beautiful, and it is about that. About it doesn't have to be very loud and overt and in your face kind of thing. A show of power. It's not about show of power. It's about being in your power, being in your connected, aligned, and at peace with yourself. I want to share that.
Thank you for saying that, Harry. That means so much. You know, I read that article and, you know, I write a little bit and then I put it to one side, and then I write a little bit and then I put it to one side, and then it just eventually comes together. But the thing is, we, like Diana said, and I'm sorry, Kenny, I'm not giving you time, you'll have a minute to talk. Like Diana said, you know, we what did you say, Diana? Like the approval, we don't feel worthy, right? And the thing is, what I've noticed, yeah, I don't know if it's all over the place, but here in the UK, if I give myself acknowledgement to say, wow, I've done well, you know, it's as if people say you shouldn't be giving yourself approval. That doesn't count. Like, what do you mean? You know, if I'm not going to acknowledge how well I've done, why should I wait for someone else to do it? So again, claiming back that power, you know, that you are good enough, you are worthy. And ultimately, it's if we can let go of what other people think and just be you, you know, already we're lifting so much off our shoulders, because we're scared to be judged. We're scared what other people think. Just let all that go.
I love that this segued into talking about children, because I've been guided most of my existence to work with them. And I was really surprised that there's not, as Chrysilla said, more practitioners working with children. But I understand with my experience of attempting that threshold, it's how can you get that consent from a child, you know? So that's where it's hard, where we do our work to connect to a child, unless it's the parent, but then who again is it that's initiating that? So it's a tricky situation. But my son, I would say, is absolutely the biggest influence in my life, but like my essence of power and our conversations that we have, because he's going to be 12 next month. Oh my God. But so like just watching him grow and the work that I do, we have these conversations that I wouldn't have, I feel, otherwise. And just hearing the perspective through a child and hearing almost the same thing through a grown adult in our work, it's just like, like it's really mind-blowing, and it just makes too much sense that it all dwindles down to the inner child, the essence of where is this fear coming from? Where is this assumption coming from? Where is all of this coming from? It's at the beginning. So I just love how that this talk about power is now talking about children, because it's all, to me, it's the same. My son gives me power. And so just, I love that this just happened. I just want to share that.
Well, I'd love to know, I'd love to add to that and see what you guys think of this, but you said that you feel power from your son, and you know, children feel, right? Like they're not thinkers, they don't have all these concepts that we have and all these beliefs. Their ultimate mechanism or mode is feeling. And I recently listened to a talk by this guy named Keone Hanalei, who is a Hawaiian who does different kinds of healing and work with the ferns, the plant, the fern. I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but amazing talk. And he was saying how the ferns hold the emotion codes for the planet. And in Hawaii, they have identified 103 different species of ferns. And there is these different institutes that are finding or naming all these different emotions that we have. And our emotional range is far bigger than what we have words for. So there's a lot of research into that. So Donna and I decided, because we wanted to learn more about grief for a book we're writing. And so we said, let's see if we can connect with the Fern Collective and see what they have to say about emotions. Oh my God. So the Fern Collective, it was a powerful session, and I'm going to upload some of this onto the Quantum Healers Forum, because it's just, we learned so much from it. But they say the gift of our emotions, the gift of the emotion code that is very specific to humans. I mean, animals have them, other things have them, plants have them, but ours specifically is our power. And as we go into this, you know, the emotions is what directs our power to create. So I'd just love to hear what you all think of that, because it blew my mind. And as I've played with that personally and in sessions, I have been feeling so much more, and the recognition of I can direct it, right? Because we always are. Whatever we're focused on, law of attraction, we're always creating our reality based on what we're focusing on, what we're believing, and what we're feeling. So I'll just put that out to you all to see what your thoughts are or feelings are about that.
Yes, it's interesting. And I really love that you mentioned the children and the emotions, because I've been doing surrogate sessions for many children the last 6 months. And what I've noticed is that these were all very strong children. And why were they so strong? Because they were really in touch with their emotion. And it somehow became a problem where they lost contact with their emotions, or where they felt that they had to suppress it. And well, in the examples that I had in the sessions, it was usually because of school teachers not giving them space to be emotional, or they needed to fit in. But I felt it was so interesting that there are so many really, really strong children who are incarnating right now. And what I also love about working with children and how their higher self is showing up in the sessions is that they have this magical appearance. Because I know there are many people within the quantum community who work with fairies or dragons, and I never was really in touch with that. And but lately, while doing these sessions with children and connecting with their highest self, I've seen examples of really huge dragons stepping forward as the higher self of these children, and who were very protective but so beautiful. And I was really amazed by the energy of those higher selves who presented themselves as dragons, because they had this crystalline energy, as if they were sparkling and colorful, and yet so strong. And I haven't had that in the regular sessions before with adults, or in the one-on-one sessions. So I really love how children are really in tune with a different dimension, isn't it? So, and what you mentioned about those ferns, I really love that, because always when I look at ferns, it reminds me of quantum healing. And I never knew why. Like, why does it remind me of quantum healing? And of course, they grow in such a magical way, the way how they unfold. And I guess it really resembles the energy of what we see in quantum healing. But I never knew about that it's part of a collective. How did you describe that, Diana? That they represent an emotional collective?
Yeah, the emotional code. If you look at like our spectrum, emotional spectrum, from one end to the other, positive, negative poles, all of that is what they represent. And the other, I'll add one more thing to that, because I think it's interesting. The fern is the only species that's been found that's in complete stasis, which means for 18 million years, it has been completely evolved. You can take a fossil of a fern from 18 million years ago and a fern today, and they're exactly the same.
Very cool. Very cool. And I just, I think I get that a lot in sessions, and in my personal experience, I do work a lot with emotional healing. It is such a big aspect of everything. And emotions bring so much, and it is what it really colors our experience. Our memories are more emotional than actual physical, stories. And remember, it's always about tainted. That's just, the stronger the emotions, the stronger the memory, for good and bad. So it is about emotions and emotional development and emotional intelligence and emotional growth and transcendence. Because as we know, the part of that we were, even I think in the past 15, 20 years, we've been evolving from people who just want to avoid their emotions, that don't want to feel emotions, to an understanding that we need to address all the emotions, give them the space, give them the ability to, because something there is unresolved. It's just our really kind of inner compass of knowing, hey, something needs addressing here. Something is incomplete. And needs to be healed and brought to peace. And this is so much more of my work, to do that, to bring people into their space of healing and understanding their emotions, making peace with their emotions, wherever it comes to. So yeah, I love that. it brings so much to the table of knowing that I haven't heard about the fern thing, but they are so incredibly beautiful. And I think they're one of the first plants on Earth, right? Yeah, so it is amazing. I also want to address the dragon thing, because I think that's the Patricia you mentioned, because it is something that has been, I too, 8 years ago, I would like, oh, that sounds a little fantastic, a little too in the more astral realms of just people's imagination. And then I start really recognizing, okay, there's more and more of that power, and I start connecting with the Dragon Collective, because I also connected with the Council of Light of Dragons and those crystalline dragons and all that, which are light. And it was beautiful to hear that a lot of they are elemental energies, and a lot of them are creators of the earth. So actually, it's not fire that they're blowing life force energy, and they're blowing that universal source energy directly into and help create things. So it is creative energy, not destructive energy like we see a lot of stuff. But there is an aspect of so a lot of I have a lot of people who come up with a lot of dragon energy that help them with power and restore their personal power and help them protect themselves from power when their environment, toxic environment, whether it's work or home. So that is something that's I've noticed a lot of people. Some of them are completely not familiar with that stuff, and you feel like that sounds weird, but they come up with a session. It's like, what is that with that dragon? Okay, that's okay. It's coming up a lot now. They really are the deliverance of power. They bring people, and their purpose is to bring a lot of humans and help us evolve and come into our power in a more fuller way. However, I encountered lately, just a couple of weeks ago, I had a client who was kind of awakening herself and has a lot of dragons that she's working with, and they're helping her, restoring her power and all that stuff. But then she encountered at work some shadow dragons of negative power, darker energies around it. And she's like, it was really, and she was seeing it because she's very psychic. She was seeing how they're influencing her coworker to be kind of drunken with power, but more of that negative ego power of like, oh, I can do anything I want, or like, I am no. So it's not no, that is not a healthy way, not in a going into your personal power, into your fullest potential, but more in the part of just like being dominant, being overpowering, and being drunken with power, literally drunken with power. And she literally saw how she became like the eyes, just like it was describing it. It was really interesting to see. And they're like, wow, I haven't actually encountered shadow dragons in a long time. And that was interesting to see. And then she encountered again. So it's like, and then we did another session about it. And it is part of her, in a past life, she was kind of a goddess that was dealing with a lot of negative power, more dragons and clearing them out. So it's important when you talk to dragons to make sure you connect with ascended dragons of higher realms and not those of the lower realms. So be aware of that, and do connect with ascended dragons, because they are beautiful and they will remind you of their power. And I needed that, and I still connect with that just to sometimes again restore my own, like, oh yes, now I remember who I am. It is part of me. It is part of my aspects, being a light dragon. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
I love that. Dragons have always been a symbol of power for me. But I love how you spoke to, Harry, the ascended or the higher frequencies of these. And I would extend that to everything, that there's physical, non-physical beings, guides, whatever you want to, name them, that are higher frequencies and lower frequencies. And so I found it's very helpful to state that clearly from the beginning. So thank you for speaking to that. And it makes me wonder, we were talking a little bit before we started this session about the positive and negative poles of power, and this disempowering. How does that happen? And as you were speaking, Harry, I was reminded of a session I had with a woman a couple years ago where she came in because she had this intense rage against the masculine and against the patriarchal society that we're in, and she just could not. She's like, I go to the place where I literally want to kill men sometimes. And she didn't want to feel this way. And so what sticks out to me from that session is that her higher self was explaining how the disempowering is devaluing of emotions, and emotions are associated with the feminine aspects. And so separating us from that part of ourselves is how the patriarchy moved into power over in the negative. And it was reflected in her. She was feeling very disempowered. And so her anger and rage was just over the top. And bringing that back into balance within her looked like connecting with those feelings in a softer way, and just recognizing that she does still have her power inside of her, despite the messages all around her to the contrary. So I think that's important to speak of. And it's not true power. It's the true power is what we have inside of us. But there's this, when we've had a great example of it over the last couple of years of not wanting to be controlled and not, people having power over us. And so what does it look like to take back that power? I've been asking myself during this time within myself. And again, it's what I choose to focus on. And this woman's higher self helped her reroute to finding the power, naming it, accessing it, and then how do I focus on bringing this into my life and stepping out of that view.
I'm sorry, Kenny, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this past couple of years definitely has been a shift in many ways for everyone in their own way, but more so in the sense of empowerment, because the powers to be are making people question everything. So they're like, wait, if these are the people who are in power, what does power mean? And in preparation for this connection, I've been asking people what power is to them. And all across the board, it all boiled down to being influenced or forced into to do something that you don't want to do. And that just blew my mind, because like every single person, they're like, well, power is someone telling me to do something or doing something I don't want to do. I'm like, to me, that's not power. Like you just said, Diana, that is the opposite of power. And so I just thought that was really interesting that you brought that up too. And it's empowering that we are having this conversation at this time in history, because we are making the books right now. And I'm so honored, because this is why we're here. We know we are here at this point for this shift, and we're doing the work. We're doing the work.
I wanted to talk about this, connecting those two real quick. Diana, I think it's rage and anger is also a form of power. It's basically a secondary reaction, because we are reacting to some other emotion, and it comes out as anger and rage. And as you said, it's about shifting it. Like, okay, what is this about? Because it is reactive. It is reactive. It's something needs to change, and it's okay to understand that there's an emotion that something needs to change. I'm not okay with something here, but how do we bring into the more mature, more ascended version of that, and getting out of this reactive, like, I don't want to be told what to do, like the 5-year-old of us that feel that way. And I think a lot of people have fell into that in the beginning. They're like, oh my God, don't tell me what to do. I'm like, it's okay. And you don't have to feel disempowered if somebody like, could you please do that? No, it doesn't have to be. When you are, there's a certain growth in that process as well, of knowing like, okay, I can be okay with some things. It doesn't mean people take my power. I don't give my power away just because there's something that is happening that needs to take place, and I take always the example of Nelson Mandela being 27 years in prison. I mean, there's nothing more that can symbolize being taken your power away. And he did not lose that sense of internal power, which is a beautiful example of how you can really transcend it into like, it doesn't matter if your body is in prison, when your spirit is free. So it's really taking it to the next level and reclaiming that power within that again, I go back to what Chrysilla said, like, I know what I am. And I know how to interact and respond to the world from power, no matter what the situation is. And the situation could be like, wars, can be deprivation, it could be a toxic relationship. It doesn't have to be something big and beyond something social. It can be just in our own lives, in our own personal lives. And I had this, brings me to talking about, I had this client, this woman who was, came to me in a place of complete powerlessness from a relationship online, and it was really shocking to see how this person, this man, had manipulated her into complete control and telling her what to do, threatening her, all through online. He wasn't even in the same country. And that was shocking to see. And I'm like, wow. And she was in a state of such disempowerment. And when I was trying to help her connect to what I like to call the greater self, which is kind of the first level of the higher self, I like to bring people to that space of openness and connection and things. And she couldn't do it. She couldn't expand herself. She was so locked into, I'm small, I'm worthless, I'm nothing, and I have no voice of my own. And that was like this. There was the epitome of like, that space of like, need to reclaim your divine feminine and need to bring balance into that as well, and bring everything into so we needed a lot of time to work on that. But she did very quickly, once you start connecting with the spirit guides and understanding, hey, you have more than just being subservient to other people, because that was a problem. It was a problem in her life. It went through all her life, being put down, being you're not, you're worthless, and just being in that space. And she was reclaiming herself, coming to her, and you can see in just the way she walked into the rooms and as she progressed in that, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know what I am. I'm okay with it. And disconnecting from that toxic relationship and reclaiming herself. Reclaiming from other relationships in her life, the parents and all that kind of stuff. So it was a beautiful way of seeing a very quick transition, like within 2 months, to switch from complete powerlessness and subjugation, you can say, to anybody else through telling her what to do. It was amazing. To, okay, I can do this. I can reclaim my life. I can do things better and become. And she moved it so quickly into that, again, that transcendent place. So that was amazing to see.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that both Kenny and Harry, the examples that you mentioned, were about seeing the power outside of yourself, and seeing this in a negative way, where and I call this the external authority, instead of the internal or inner authority. And I believe that this develops in our early childhood, when in the way that our parents deal with their authority as parents. And so I think a lot of the work that we can do for people is to connect them with that first relationship with authority. Like, how was that experience, and what is the first memory of external authority, external power, and what was the first memory of your inner power, your inner authority. And so it's quite interesting that people start to feel powerless when they see it outside of themselves, and losing that connection with their own feelings, their own wisdom. And so I guess working with children is so important in these sessions, because that's where it starts, doesn't it? And I've also noticing that a lot of parents are coming for sessions because they're looking for ways, how can I raise my child without fear? How can I raise my child where it will keep that feeling of being whole and knowing who you are? And I guess within psychology, people they think that a child is like, how do you say that in English, like a blank page, and we need to build that identity. But I believe that our soul is our identity. And when we are able to have that child feeling connected with their soul, they know who they are, they know their identity. And I love how both Chrysilla and Harry mentioned a few times that feeling of, I know who I am. And when I look at the deepest processes in my own life, I always knew how to get through that because I had this deep feeling like, I know who I am. I know what I need. And no matter what is happening around me, I can always go back to that core. And that core is your soul. It's that energy of your soul, which I believe, yeah, I guess if we would look for the physical place where does our soul reside, I think it's the heart. I think that is the bridge between this earthly life and the source that we come from. And I think as long as we're connected with love, with self-love and our hearts, that is where we find who we are and that sense of identity or soul identity. So I wonder how you all look at this.
Patricia, you said a few things that I would like to touch upon, but first I want to ask the gentleman a question, Harry and Kenny. So Patricia, you said our soul is in our hearts, and that could be right? Because women, we feel in our hearts. But for men, I'm curious, because I feel like men are more guided by their instincts and they more feel into their tummy area, the solar plexus area. So how does that relate to you? If you were to connect to yourself as a man, how would you say you feel guided, or you feel the feelings within you that you know, okay, I'm on the path that I'm meant to be on?
For myself, I'm pretty unique as a man. So I'm very in touch to my feminine side in many ways, but I definitely agree with, I am a gut feeling type of a person. So like my stress is in my stomach. Whenever I feel something, happy, excited, sad, anger, it's in my stomach. Then I transmute it into my heart to get to where I need to be, like what Patricia was talking about. So I agree with what you said. Yeah. Harry?
I think it depends where the emotional center is in the heart, obviously. And from my work, I work actually with a lot of men as well. It is in the heart, mostly. That's where the biggest emotional center is, and connection to who we are. And when I connect people, one of my processes, just like we do in the BQH, is connecting first of all to your heart energy and breathing into your heart and all that kind of stuff. So that works with everyone. So that's good in that way. But I think in general, as far as energetically, a lot of people say that the center of your power is actually in your second chakra and third chakra. So it depends what ancient energy you're looking for. But so personal power is usually in the third chakra, solar plex. But so I think it's a combination, and I think we are anyway a combination. And there's points of connection between things, but from our consciousness, our soul energy, and through us to the physical, to the emotional level, to the mental level of who we are. So we have those different aspects of ourselves, and it all works and intertwines and connects and constantly. I think it's but to answer what you're saying, again, I think I'm the same way. I'm not usually the usual guy in that way. I think most men, and I can say that most men are just more thick in that way, emotionally and socially understanding of what's happening, the subtleties. But I think men are more mental centered as far as what decision making and stuff like that, more mental and just focused on their conscious awareness and consciousness. And I am a lot of the conscious, but it's just a combination, because I do like to work with a lot of emotions. So it is different. I'm different that way.
Well, I think it is. I like that both of you called yourself unique, but I think you're here because you're so creative. You work with a creative side. You work with a feminine side. So that's lovely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I really liked to hear your perspective on that. But going back to what Patricia said about, when children incarnate, we think they are a blank slate, and that's not necessarily the case. So a very tragic story where a man, he wanted to believe so much in past life regression, or that we do reincarnate, and that there is a continuation, of our soul and our progress, and it's not a clean slate every time. Unfortunately, he lost both of his girls in a car accident. But moving on a few years, his wife fell pregnant with twins, and both the babies had exact same birthmarks as the children he lost. So life is so complex, and we don't always understand why tragic things happen, or why things, where unexplained things happen. Why would we lose someone or a loved one? But ultimately, it's all an experience, and we may not understand the bigger picture, but things happen to give us the answers that we're seeking or exploring, and that everything isn't necessarily a blank slate. Because when children come into this life, it's as if there are moments where they kind of forget in which dimension they're in, and they slip back into that past experience. It's like, I can remember, this is a fascinating story. I can remember as a child, I used to say to my mum, "You're not my real mum." I used to say that. And I'd confused my mum because she didn't know what to say or to do with that. And she's like, "What do you mean? I'm your mum," But she didn't have that knowledge to ask the right questions, to explore where that was coming from. And yeah, thank you.
Can I add just a fun little biological thing to that heart-gut thing? Such a fun topic. And Harry, I like how you mentioned consciousness, because as we know, every cell in our body has its own consciousness. Our body has its own consciousness. And when our bodies begin to form, and the sperm and the egg come together and they form that first cell, and then that cell divides into two cells and they continue to divide. They've tracked those first two cells. One of them becomes the heart, one of them travels down and becomes the gut, the digestive system. And so it's kind of our second heart. And if I think about that from biological, but also the consciousness standpoint together, it makes perfect sense, because we all experience the butterflies in the stomach, the emotional, visceral reactions and links. And it's there from the beginning.
I think a huge part of the shift, the events, if you want to call it, that were occurring right now is the emergence of all of that. So there's no more just feminine, masculine ways. We are all. So I love that you brought that up, Chrysilla. But when people ask that about me being a male, but then very in touch with my feminine, it's opens up so many amazing conversations. And I know it's also why I do what I do with this work, because I work with everyone under the rainbow. So yeah, it's really cool.
I would add to that, Kenny, this came up in a session just a couple of days ago, this perspective of what we're moving from right now. And I've thought of it as, the world of separation, the, good, bad, right, wrong, the system of duality. We talk about moving into unity, and masculine and feminine is a huge part of it, because that's like the ultimate division. It's all arbitrary, right? We all have both. But in this session, they talked about we're moving from the victim perpetrator system to the empowered sovereign individual. And man, I was like, that encompasses so much of this victim perpetrator. I'm being controlled. I'm not. I'm free. I'm empowered. I'm disempowered. To this, I am sovereign in my being. I am co-creating with you. I am full of power together. And I loved those words. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
That is beautiful. It's just such a beautiful culmination of everything we talked about. It is about that. It's about moving into oneness, it's just our next evolution, our human and ascension as beings, into just a next level out of this duality, out of this space of any kind of duality of power, disempower, of joy, sadness, and all that kind of all this polar experience that we have. As we all worked with so many lifetimes in this past, eons of lifetimes, it is a lot about exploring that. That I think as a soul, to explore the disconnection and how far you can be in a point of disconnection from source. And as farther away from source you are, the more disconnected, the more you are in this polarization of having and not having, and just polar experience of emotions and all that stuff. And then as we start to combine all of our human experience as each soul over soul and soul collective, we start to gather all that together and start moving into the next level, into the next phase thing of just bringing it all together. Just this is our collective knowledge of all that is, of pain, joy, and because as souls, we cannot experience what it is to be disconnected from source. We don't have that knowledge. We're like, wow, that'd be fascinating to know how to feel fear. They can, as a soul, we cannot feel fear. That's what I get from a lot of sessions. So it's our job to come down to be as disconnected as possible from our own self and feeling that smallness, that level of consciousness of being and disconnected and struggle of all different sizes, because we cannot experience it otherwise. So it is part of our own evolution. And the more we become conscious, the more we are bringing ourselves to that space. It just becomes one, becomes that accumulation of experience of, and again, a lot of it comes back to what we said in the beginning, of that emotional experience, because otherwise we cannot experience it. If we are completely all the time in the space of love, joy, and connection, we cannot experience the rest of it. So that's what we come here. That's my perspective on it. And this, again, it connects directly to power. When the more disconnected we are, disempowered, so we collect that experience of being disempowered, and we now learn how to align and connect with our power.
Yes, it reminds me of a session that I had a few years ago, where someone experienced the very first incarnation that he had. And it was experiencing how his consciousness has split off from source and became like a unique consciousness, like a unique soul, as a fragmented part of, well, the one consciousness that people call God. And I remember that in that session, he felt almost angry that he had split off from that collective consciousness and became an individual soul, because it immediately brought in the experience of being rejected or being separated. And that created fear. And it was so interesting to see how the feeling of being separated from the whole was the beginning of fear. I thought it was so interesting. And I guess in that session, we did see that making him aware of how he can connect with the collective again, and how he can connect with that one consciousness again, can make him feel whole again. And that is also the same frequency where fear is being transformed into, well, divine love. I don't know any other word for it than divine love, because it is literally divine. And I guess that's so beautiful about quantum healing sessions. When you connect people with their higher self, it's as if they enter the higher frequencies where they are in that field, where they are experiencing that unity and collective consciousness. And I think when I look at the most impressive sessions that I had, or that I was able to guide or facilitate or witness, it was where people were making the biggest shift from fear to that unity consciousness. And I think it's so amazing when you can see someone have that experience where they connect with God or source or that unity consciousness. It's as if everything, all fears, they vanish within a split second. And life changes within a split second, just simply by remembering how it is to be part of that. I think it's so unique. Yeah, it's strange to call it unique, because it's about not being unique. But yeah, it's so amazing that we can be part of that, isn't it?
It is. Over my experience too, with between clients and just life experiences, again, with asking what people think power is, not realizing that no one can take your power. So when everyone's like, well, someone took this, someone like, no, you gave it away. And just remembering that usually is enough of a shift to be like, oh, it's mine. They could never have had it, so they couldn't have taken it. I love that you keep talking about remembering and source. And I've always known, I think I've heard it over the years too, that the Big Bang Theory at the beginning of Source was going from I am to am I, and that caused the first shift, and then that all just snowballed from there. So it's, yeah.
Can you go a bit more into the I am I? That's fascinating.
Yeah, I think about it all the time because it helps me get back to my source of I am. But then when you question, am I? Then boom. And then from there, it's like, oh, am I? Because that see that and I see this and I'm separated from this. Then it just keeps going, kind of like the cell splitting and splitting and splitting. But it all goes back to I am. Not am I, I am. And so it sounds simple, but it's, of course, it's way more quantum than that. So it's something that helps me over the years. And with my clients, I tell that story and it usually shifts something for them. Yeah, I don't know, has anyone else not heard that? The I am to am I? Oh,
No, it's the first time I'm hearing that.
I think I might have read it somewhere. I have to look it up and I'll share it because I know I didn't make it up myself, but you never know.
But it does make sense. It does make sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, and it raises a question for me when you say that. I think it's a question that comes up with clients regularly, where people wonder, did I choose to be born? Did I choose to be incarnated, or was I forced by some force outside of myself? And to be honest, I still haven't figured that out, because I've seen sessions where people seem to have really chosen the life path and chosen that incarnation. But others, they didn't seem to have that much of a choice, or it was as if their choice is limited. And so I wonder how your perspective is, because that is also part of being in power, isn't it? Like choosing your own destiny or choosing your own life path. So how do you see that?
In my experience, it always has been the choice of the soul. It chooses what is there to. If you take the time to go to that place of review between lives, it always comes to that point of like, oh yeah, okay, so I didn't finish to learn that lesson about whatever it is, self-love or understanding what this is or that is. So let's see what I want to do, how I want to create a life, how I want to create those situations that will come up again, so I can learn that a concept or theme to completion. So in my experience, and I've done a lot of them, is that it's always the choice of the soul. And sometimes it is choosing hard situations. Sometimes it is choosing, you'd think like, why would the soul choose such a rough experience? But it is about learning, about getting that and learning. And sometimes, again, I'll give a concept of just simple like grief, which is something that we all understand. And at some life, the person became hardened. The heart had become hard and could not love again, could not experience love again in that lifetime. So it chose to have grief again. And in this time to really give another opportunity for in that space to learn how to love again, love themselves, love another person, and all that kind of stuff. So it is about, but the soul makes that choice of what to do, who's going to be from the soul group, who's going to take what role, and how we're going to do this, and what lessons we're going to give each other. And so it usually is a very, very meticulously chosen matrix. And again, it has to be forgotten in order to take the role and be experienced fully.
Yeah, and I think that's the tricky part, is that we do need to forget in order to go through it again. And yet you said something earlier, Harry, about anger or rage always points to something that needs attention. Just makes me think everything serves. And it's my understanding too that the soul does choose. I mean, we each are creating, this game we're playing and playing roles, and other people agree to play roles with us in order to experience, in order to learn, in order to expand the all. And yet we come in here and we forget, and we come into the system of duality and polarity, right? And it's so hard, and the struggle, and this shouldn't be happening. And I mean, to me, though, that all comes from the system of good, bad, right, wrong. I like this, I don't like that. And when we step outside of it, I mean, that's the value, right? Is recognizing, oh yeah, I love when people leave a lifetime and look down on it and they're just so neutral, or they laugh, or they find, I think it was, I'm a student of Seth, channeled by Jane Roberts, and he talks about, if I would have known that all of this was my creation, I would have had a lot more fun with it. I would have laughed a lot more about it. I would have gotten way more creative with my life experiences and my deaths and all of that. So, bringing in even that humor into looking at, wow, I really chose a doozy that time. And I use that personally. Why wait till then? Like, can I find that now? Can I see what am I learning now instead of, oh, well, someday I'll understand that. Well, how about today?
I can see everyone laughing and smiling and nodding and in total agreement, because I have that all the time too with my clients, with even if it's children or past life regression, and it's the, we get to the review stage, it is very neutral. Oh, that happened. Oh, that was the purpose of that. No emotion involved, nothing, no, because if you look at the feeling state, we can feel, but as soon as there is an emotion, it's like Harry said earlier, it's electrified, it's emotion, energy in motion, it's something that's coming up that needs to be dealt with or needs to be healed. But I also love the neutrality of when we review a life. And why not, Diana? Live life to the fullest in the now. We take ourselves too seriously, and I need to constantly remind myself to stop overthink and stop taking myself too seriously. It's like, it's just, I was brought up with it, and it's become a habit, and it's a constant reminder. Yeah. Have laugh, enjoy life.
Beautiful. I think that's a beautiful point to complete our conversation here. Does anybody has anything else they would like to add to the concept of power, or have some closing words? Feel free to do so.
Just a small thing. I'm a huge numerology geek, and so I looked up the numerology for power, and it's number 5. Shocker, the 5 of us joined. Of course, it means transformation and change, and ancient Egypt is the symbol for the womb. So how awesome that we're talking about children with all of this. Yeah. And 5 being in the middle between 1 and 9 is the pivotal point for everything else. So just want to share that little nerdy thing.
That's really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And when I look at that from an astrological point of view, that reminds me of the sun. And the sun in the chart is the life force energy and also your identity. So that does make a lot of sense. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay.
I'd love to say one last thing too. One of the powerful things I felt about this particular group discussing that is that we have men and women here, and talking about being empowered and using all of us to create our lives and to feel full of our power combines both. And so I'm just so grateful that we have a good balance here today of the masculine and feminine.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone to contributing and being a beautiful part of this conversation. I love that. So thank you. And hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to our conversation and what we have inputted, and enjoy the Quantum Realm 2022. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harry. And thank you all.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.